All right, everyone. Hello. My name is Thomas, and welcome to my channel. I do educational videos. Today is the 64th video that we're doing on the reciprocal system of theory, derived by Dewey B. Larson back in the 20th century, up until his death in 1990. We're looking actually at his final book that is called Beyond Space and Time, and this is the 42nd video of this book, and this book came out after he died in 1995, and it is a departure, and some of his adherents thought it was blasphemy that his wife would publish this after he died, because he would have never wanted this to be published, because Larson, according to them, was a hard-headed scientist, and he wouldn't he wouldn't want his dabblings on metaphysical matters, religion, psychology, philosophy, to be published, because all of his earlier books are on astronomy, astrophysics, chemistry, physics, and a couple books on economics. But be that as may, we are looking at his final book, and the basic gist of the theory that he started out with his fundamental postulates back in the 50s, and then he built a theoretical universe from his postulates, from deducing, if this, then that, and then if this, then that. Is that the universe is not made out of matter, it's not made out of energy, but the universe is made out of motion. And motion is the relationship between time and space. Time and space are reciprocal aspects of each other. And they are both quantized, and they both have 3 dimensions. I would say 3 or 4 dimensions. It's a very pretty minor point. But so the basic idea is that if you have 1 unit of space and 1 unit of time, 1 unit of space in 1 unit of time is the speed of light. And where Larson says that the speed of light, or where Einstein says that the speed of light is the maximum speed of the universe, in Larson's reciprocal system, in his universe of motion, motion is always there, and motion at the speed of light is in fact the midpoint or the neutral point of the universe. And that there's half the universe that's moving faster than the speed of light, which he calls the cosmic sector, or sector 2. And there's half the universe that's moving faster than the speed of, or slower than the speed of light, and that's sector 1, or the material sector that we're familiar with, the world of atoms and molecules. And those atoms and molecules aggregate together over time, and they build up to their most complex level, which he says is the DNA molecule. And at that point, they become eligible to be under the control of the sector 2 unit, which is just which should just be a minor part. Such as, same way as a thermostat is just a minor part of a room, but it controls the environment. And when the sector 2 unit controls the material unit, then we have what he calls the life unit. So life is a putting together of a sector 1 component, the DNA molecule, and the sector 2 control. And then beyond that, he has also sector 3, which is the metaphysical unit, or the metaphysical region that is actually independent of or beyond space and time. And I think most people would call that God. Larson calls it sector 3. And once the life unit gets to its most complicated, complex form, then which is, he says, the intelligent human being or humanoid, then it becomes eligible to be controlled overall by the general metaphysical region or sector 3. At that point, the human being is beset with two forms of control. One is bent on survival, that's the life unit, sector 2, and the other is bent on ethical behavior or good behavior, that's sector 3. At certain times, those two things work in concert with each other, and in other points they are at cross purposes, and the human being has to be able to decide which one to follow. Now, he gets into this in the next chapter, but we are about to start chapter 16, which is on dream interpretation. Now, remember, dreams are really, they have sector 3 implications, but they're fundamentally coming from sector 2, which is the thinking and the memory, the electrical or the mental apparatus. And thinking and memory are sector 2 things, where sector 1 is subject to the flow of time. Sector 2 is subject to 3-dimensional time. The reverse would be true about space, where space is 3-dimensional in sector 1 and it is flowing in sector 2. And so the thinking and memory periodically gets out of sync with the sector 1 unit and has to be disconnected and rewound. That is what he would call sleeping. But the thinking and the memory rewind at different rates, or they need variable amounts of rewinding, because the memory is much simpler than the thinking. So the memory rewinds quicker than the thinking. And so at a certain point, the memory is done rewinding, but the thinking continues to be rewound. So the memory is disconnected and it just idles. At that point, we have what he calls REM sleep. So dreaming is the result of the memory being done rewinding and the thinking continuing to rewind. Okay, now we're going to take over here with Larson, starting at chapter 16, Dream Interpretation from the Beginning. He's going to set the stage here. From the earliest time of which we have any detailed knowledge, dreams have been regarded as repositories of hidden messages, and their interpretation has been a matter of great interest. Hidden information is presumably information that is not available, or at least not readily available elsewhere. And since the closed door that the human race has always had the greatest desire to penetrate is the one that leads to the future, one of the most popular ideas has been that dreams provide a means of foretelling future events. In order to discover the hidden meaning, one must find the plan of concealment. And the general belief has been that dreams accomplish this by representing the true meaning in the form of symbols. Most present-day investigators have abandoned the hope of extracting any information about the future of dream analysis, but they have retained the conception that the perceived content of a dream is a symbolic representation of its true meaning. Quoting Freud, he says, the dream content is, as it were, presented in hieroglyphics, whose symbols must be translated one by one into the language of dream thoughts, of the dream thoughts. In view of the prevalence of this opinion, one of the most significant aspects of the results obtained from the dream study described in the preceding chapter, where he went over a month worth of his dreams and analyzed them you could watch the last couple videos to get a summary of all that, or a detailed summary of that, is that dreams show, according to him, dreams show no trace of symbolism. Some of the objects or actions currently considered to be symbolic were present in my recorded dreams, but in all cases, it could easily be seen that they were present in their ordinary significance, not as symbols of something else. The snake that I saw in one dream was not a symbol. It was a memory of a rather spectacular snake that I saw in a television program a few hours earlier. The gun that appeared in another dream was not a symbol. It was a direct memory of a gun that played a prominent part in a mystery story that I had just laid down before retiring. In the dream record, I was holding a rather peculiar long gun. It seemed more like a museum piece than a modern weapon, was his quote in his dream journal. In the book, the gun was a collector's item that could well have had a place in a museum. It is evident from the results of this study that symbols play no part in my dreams under relatively calm living conditions. This does not guarantee that they are also absent from the dreams of others under similar conditions, but it does create a rather strong presumption to that effect, particularly since much of my work deals with abstractions and symbols, and I would seem to be among those most likely to utilize symbolisms in my dreams, if anyone does. The question as to whether I or others employ symbolism under highly emotional conditions also remains open. But here again, it seems quite improbable that operation under stress would change the basic nature of the dream process. While the results of this dream study actually demonstrate the absence of symbolism only under a limited range of conditions, this amount of negative evidence is highly significant because it is completely in agreement with the conclusions reached in the two preceding chapters with respect to the mechanism of dreaming. These findings, which show that dreams are products of the normal operation of the memory during sleep, the memory system during sleep, cut the ground out from under the symbol hypothesis. The dream is constructed from themes already in the system, and it is elaborated with details drawn from the memory storage by means of the association process. It has some unfamiliar aspects because it is a product of memory only, with none of the participation by the thinking mechanism that characterizes the conscious activities of the mind. Again, the thinking process, the reasoning process tends to serve as a censor that censors out the kind of unreasonable or irrational material that can come into play through the memory, because memory is based on association. So, a person that you work with who has certain characteristics can be substituted for a certain other person that you work with who is much, much different. And so when the memory apparatus is using the association process, sometimes bizarre things can be associated one with another that are out of context in the context that the dream is in, or even your waking impressions are under. So the association process, according to Larson, is where this bizarre kind of non sequiturs are evident in your dreams, along with the fact that your thinking is is still rewinding, and so it's not there to censor those bizarre points. Okay, so it has some unfamiliar aspects because it is a product of memory only, with none of the participation by the thinking mechanism that characterizes the conscious activities of the mind. But there is no distortion or disguise involved. The dream is an enigma only to the person who is looking for something that is not there. All of the theories of dream symbolism, from those of the early day prophets and soothsayers to those of the modern psychologists and psychoanalysts, rest entirely on the assumption that the dreams must have some meaning of consequence. Since no such meaning is manifest in the dreams as they are experienced, it follows from the assumed premises that the meaning must be disguised in some manner, and the use of symbols for this purpose is a hypothesis that has been proposed. It has no factual basis. The present-day theories of dream symbolism have no more empirical support than the prophetic theories that have been abandoned to the pseudoscientists. The mere fact that someone like Freud arrives at a conclusion as to the meaning of a dream that satisfies him or that appears plausible to others does not prove anything. The interpretation is still an untested hypothesis. The symbolic interpretation of dreams is simply assumption piled upon assumption. Moreover, just when he mentions assumption piled upon assumption, it reminds me of prophecy as well. People are constantly putting this kind of symbolic interpretation on prophecy, which is nothing more, in my opinion, than wishful thinking. And it seems to be what you would call confirmation bias. It's like they want all these prophecies to be pointing at a specific date or time, and they're always reading this very vague language into what they want it to be, what they want to be important. And I would argue that probably more of the prophecy is in terms of actual literal prophecy as opposed to symbolic, if at all. Okay, so we'll get into that in a month or so, once we get done with this book here. Okay, back to the interpretation of dreams. Furthermore, the memory mechanism as we know it from conscious experience operates by means of straightforward association of items that have some common feature. There is no disguise or distortion involved. In order to account for the concealment of the true meaning of dreams by means of symbolism, it would therefore be necessary to assume the existence of an additional mechanism of some kind. There is no physical indication that any such mechanism, nor do the proponents of the concealment or symbolism hypothesis seem to have given any consideration to the question as to what purpose a concealment process would serve if an appropriate mechanism did exist. There is no need for any special means of concealing the existence of the meaning of dreams from other persons. The dreamer has full control over the release of the information in any event. He can withhold any or all of it, or alter it arbitrarily as he sees fit. In fact, only a tiny fraction of the dreams that occur are ever brought to the attention of others, and many of these are heavily censored by the dreamer. Thus, the only purpose of a concealment process, if it existed, would be to hide the meaning of the dream from the dreamer himself. This is the purpose implied by the prevailing opinion that the significance of the dream can only be ascertained with the aid of an interpreter. Again, he's looking at, I don't like to use the word democracy, but the democratization of all of these things, where we're continually trying to lean on and be dependent on somebody else, to like a preacher, to figure out for us, or a dream interpreter to figure out for us what these things actually mean. What does the Bible mean, or whatever holy book you're talking about? What does it mean? Well, but that's the whole point of the reciprocal system, is that it gives you those tools so that you can figure it out for yourself. You do not have to depend on somebody else to figure out physics and astrophysics and chemistry, or psychology, religion, and philosophy. You can figure it out using the principles of the reciprocal system of theory. You do not need to rely on these soothsayers, so to speak, or the guys in the white lab coats, or the guys in the frocks. They are interlopers, intermediaries, and they muddy the waters at best. And they might do it on purpose. But if you can rely on your own resources, then you avoid all that. So that's it for today. So we will look more into the lack of symbolism in dreams, according to Larson, and we will also look at some of his adherents who disagree with him. Okay, we'll catch you next time. Have a great day.